This episode is brought to you by our good friends at NFL Sunday Ticket on YouTube TV. I'm sure by now you've all gotten back into your Sunday routines, but they could be even better. With NFL Sunday Ticket and YouTube TV, you get the most live NFL games all in one place, every game, every Sunday. And you can even watch up to 4 different games at once with multi-view, one of my favorite inventions of this decade. It's exactly what you need to catch all the action, make your Sundays more magical, and also YouTube TV is great. I got it this year. It's awesome. Sign up now at youtube.com/BS. Device and content restrictions apply. Local and national games on YouTube TV. NFL Sunday Ticket for out-of-market games excludes digital-only games.
Auto insurance can all seem the same until it comes time to use it. So don't get stuck paying more for less coverage. Switch to USAA Auto Insurance and you could start saving money in no time. Get a quote today. Restrictions apply. USAA.
Welcome into 49ers Access. My name is Sterling Bennett, and as always, whenever the San Francisco 49ers don't practice, they find a way to stay in the headlines. And just like almost every other day of the summer, the Brandon Aiyuk saga continues today, and we got new information. We got some of the same information, but it seems like we are about to finally hit a resolution, that something is going to transpire, whether it is a contract extension or it is a trade of Brandon Aiyuk to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Those are the only two options we see in front of us as viable. We're almost there. Whether it's good or bad, we are almost to a resolution. I want to kindly ask you to like, share, and subscribe to the show, and hope you enjoyed the content. If you do, leave that like and let's jump into today's news, because as of this morning, and we're talking like 9 a.m., 10 a.m., Ian Rappaport said this: the Steelers and the Niners have a deal on a potential trade, and Pittsburgh is in a good place on a Brandon Aiyuk contract. The only thing that needs to happen is San Francisco giving the final sign-off. Once that happens, it's done, and a trade is then agreed upon. But it looks like, just like with the Browns and the Patriots, the Niners do have a deal in place with the Pittsburgh Steelers to send Brandon Aiyuk to the East Coast. That is in place, ready to go. Rap Sheet also said San Francisco has an offer out to Aiyuk on a long-term deal for him to stay. He hasn't accepted. So again, the Niners are at a point in time where they still believe they can get a deal done with Brandon Aiyuk. They have an offer on the table. We have no idea how much that is, mind you, but there's an offer on the table. They're waiting and hoping Aiyuk takes that offer. And if he doesn't, if he's adamant of get me out of San Francisco, then they will pull the trigger, if you will, on a deal sending him to Pittsburgh. And we already have a lot of comments here. Bobo says, I hope Brandon Aiyuk chooses to stay with the Niners, but I believe he'll be playing for another team. Catherine Cole on YouTube says, we need Brandon Aiyuk, but the Niners can only do so much to keep him brand before player when it comes down to it. Or the name on the front matters more than the name on the back. Fluffy Ninja says, bang, bang. Spy Nick Danger says, hit that like button. I agree. Hit that like button and go Niners. But let's talk about what Catherine said, that we need Brandon Aiyuk. That's your first statement. You're right, Catherine. The Niners need Brandon Aiyuk. Now, do the Niners need Brandon Aiyuk to win the division? No. Do they need him to go to the NFC Championship game? Likely. Do they need him to win the Super Bowl? Yes. Now, I'll phrase it this way, though, because it gets tricky. There are a lot of Steeler fans out there that believe, mainly one, I won't say his name, that believe the minute they acquire, if they do get Brandon Aiyuk, he makes them a Super Bowl contender. Aiyuk is not going to make a bad team with bad quarterback play and questions on the offense a Super Bowl contender, but he can put a team like San Francisco on the precipice of becoming a Super Bowl winner over the top. That's the difference. The impact of Brandon Aiyuk on the two different franchises here. But just like Catherine says, we need Aiyuk, but it's brand over player, which leads me to a conversation we've had a handful of times on the podcast, is that who's to blame for all this? Whose fault is it we've gotten this far? Man, it's been a long road. A lot of ups and downs, twists and turns has been kind of the phrase used in the media. And ultimately, if I had to pick one person, I think I would pick, I'm pretty sure I would pick the San Francisco 49ers of who I would blame for this. And the reason why I say that isn't to reduce what Brandon Aiyuk has done on social media, to leave him without fault, because I do think there is some fault on his end where he's playing super hardball and playing with San Francisco. This, I only want to go to Washington. I only want to go to Pittsburgh. I'm not going to Cleveland, because if you wanted out bad enough, you'd want to be out. But I do think ultimately both these people, being the Niners, the party, right, the team, and Brandon Aiyuk, they both want to stay together. But there's egos involved. There's money involved, which can always taint a relationship. They always say, never do business with your friends. You want to know why? Usually it ends relationships, or it can get kind of murky and nasty when you do. But who's to blame for getting us to August 13th, where there's only one thing or two options, right, as Aiyuk put it himself on social media? Keep me or trade me. Meet my demand financially, or trade me to a team that already has agreed to do so. I don't like doing this, especially because Catherine has stated that brand over player. I have to believe the brand is majority at fault here. We have reported or discussed every rumor report out there since April. And I've said the entire time, I think a deal gets done. Oh, push it off, it'll get done. This is how San Francisco does things. And I think I fell for that. I think many people fell for that. It's why we're here. It's why people like Pastor Jay says, Sterling, I don't know what to believe anymore. He says, she says. You're right. There's so much out there. And sometimes it's hard what to believe, and it's hard to believe we're actually here, where in the next day, hours, whatever it is, week, Aiyuk could or could not be a 49er. But let's go back to April. This is why I think I would blame the Niners for getting to this point. And I want to preface this by saying a deal can still get done, that they can get to a money mark they like financially, and we could all sit here and say, who cares who's to blame? Aiyuk's still a Niner. That's definitely a possibility. But let's say he's not going to be a Niner. This arduous process has been a pain in the arse, if you will. It has frustrated you, myself, and 1,000% the team and the player. In fact, Matt Barrows of The Athletic said this: the Niners are frustrated with Brandon Aiyuk. They're not exactly sure what he wants to do. I don't know where the Steelers came from. It's a little odd that a guy who's under contract is going to a team saying, I only want to go to these few places. He's dictating where he wants to go. But I think that surprised the Niners of like, whoa, you don't want to play here? Like, I thought we were on good terms. And I think that's what shocked San Francisco of like, what's happening? There are times during this process where it felt like San Francisco was blindsided. One of those main examples is the market exploding. Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jalen Waddle and Justin Jefferson. The market just, catapulting out of control and then kind of being caught off guard as to, we don't want to pay that much money, Brandon. But that's kind of the big thing here, is that San Francisco has, and rightfully so at times, especially with players like Debo and Warner and Kittle and Bosa, they've got accustomed to and got us accustomed to them waiting these things out, them playing these things out until the very end to get the player to accept the money they want them to take, the offer, the contract they think is fitting of the player. Brandon Aiyuk knows that. And while I wasn't expecting this, especially because Aiyuk has played, the good boy, if you will, through a lot of this. He wasn't posting on social media for months. He wasn't talking in the media for months. The only thing you heard from him was on draft night when they picked Ricky Pearsall. And he said, that's a great pick. It's a fire pick. That wasn't okay. He's on board with this. He's not bothered. And then you hear Adam Schefter say maybe a month or two ago that both parties thought they had a deal in place before the draft. And again, going back to why I blame San Francisco to getting to here is Jalen Waddle didn't get signed to a brand new deal until late May. San Francisco, for lack of better terms, had a handshake, had a verbal agreement, had the deal in place, like they've had all these trades in places to send Aiyuk elsewhere. They had a deal in place, structured out of, okay, we like this. Maybe some small numbers have to change, but we like this. Then nothing happened. Then they didn't make an offer. Then they didn't change their number. Then they didn't put pen to paper. They waited. This thing that was looked to be done all of a sudden came to a screeching halt. Then the market shifted. Then Aiyuk asked, rightfully so, for more money. This deal could have been done in April. This deal could have been done pre-draft, but San Francisco thinking, hey, the market's not going to explode, not having the foresight of, if it does, he's going to ask for more money. Like, they waited for this whole thing to play out when they could have got ahead of themselves. Could have done things different for a player that was ready to sign, from the reports Adam Schefter said, months ago. They put themselves in this position to not have foresight and also not working on, being proactive on getting a deal done. Aiyuk didn't renege on the deal until after the market exploded. But there was a month of time in between that where a deal could have been done. And you would like to think, compared to signing your draft class or re-signing your all-pro receiver, one of them should take, should come in as a priority over the other one. So I blame San Francisco for getting us to this point. I don't blame a player. Like, I always use this way. Put myself in Brandon Aiyuk's shoes. If I come into a job making $18 an hour, or I'm offered a job making $18 an hour, then I learn another person doing the exact same job as me. Similar numbers, similar output, but what I do maybe has better outcomes. We are successful more with me than the other team, the other group with that guy. That guy's getting $22 an hour. Well, I'm going to say, wait a minute. Well, I'm doing the exact same job that guy's doing, and I'm making $4 less. No, I want that money. That's why I don't blame Aiyuk for this, and I can attest to this to myself. I work in radio. People ask for raises, and sometimes they deserve them. Sometimes you feel like you deserve a raise at your job, and you don't get it. It frustrates you. It angers you. Like, well, I'm worth more than that person is. Aiyuk looked at Jalen Waddle and Amon-Ra St. Brown and Justin Jefferson and said, well, I'm worth something more than what you're offering me. And then San Francisco didn't move. They didn't budge, thinking Aiyuk would just say, okay, I guess I'll accept. Whereas he's like, wait a minute now. We were cool. We were on good terms. And now you don't want to play ball with me. That bothers me too. So San Francisco's routine of waiting and pushing these things off has led them here. But so what do you do now that you're here? Some people like Art believe that Brandon's going to be a Steeler. He'll make more money. Or excuse me, he's using the Steelers to get more money out of San Francisco. Bobo thinks if they trade Aiyuk, they'll get Minkah Fitzpatrick. Tony Meredith says they just reported Aiyuk and the Niners are close to a deal. There's all these reports out there. Everyone has different opinions on things. Fluffy Ninja says Trent's more important than Brandon Aiyuk. I'd agree with that, but still. Olive Oil says Brandon's staying in the Bay. What do you do? What do you do? This is what I think is going to happen. I do think Aiyuk and the Niners want to be together. I do think that Brandon Aiyuk wants to stay with San Francisco. There has been no point in time Aiyuk has indicated his first priority is to leave San Francisco. Podcast, social media posts, he has never indicated he wants to play somewhere else over San Francisco. He has said he will play other places after San Francisco or other than San Francisco. It's always been, I'll be a Niner, and if I'm not, then insert two other teams in place. It's never been, I want to be a Steeler. I want to be a Commander. It's always, yeah, I think I'll be a Niner. But if I'm not a Niner, I'll be on a different team. That's why I don't think these two people, this couple wants to break up. There's frustrations. There's pride in the way. There's egos in the way. There's Kyle Shanahan. There's John Lynch. The Niners don't want to get bit by a player, right? They've never truly lost a contract negotiation in August. Nick Bosa moved them. I wouldn't say they lost that deal. Yes, they gave him more money than he wanted, certainly. But you got the Defensive Player of the Year back. You didn't lose that deal. They've never gotten to this point with a player. It's become winning and losing, not how can we compromise. So, again, now that you're here, what do you do? What do you do? Lori Matthews says this. BA isn't worth that much here, though, just because other teams are stupid enough to pay $30 million for a receiver doesn't mean you should. Teams aren't winning Super Bowls by overpaying receivers. You're not wrong. The Chiefs being one of the main examples of that this past year, winning and beating us without a star receiver. Sure. Is Brandon Aiyuk in this offense worth $28 million a year, though? From all intents and purposes, from the reports we've seen as of today, San Francisco did increase their offer. According to Mike Garafolo, Brandon Aiyuk prefers to stay in San Francisco. The Niners' offer has also gotten better than their original deal. Now, I don't know if that's better than $26 million per year. That could be a better guarantee, but it's gotten better in some aspect. Garafolo also said that both sides, Aiyuk and his agent and the Niners front office, have agreed on many of the main points of a deal. The building blocks are there for them to strike a new contract, to get an extension done, but there's some smaller things they have to tweak and fine-tune to actually put this thing in stone, to put this thing to bed finally, right? Garafolo says the ball is in the Niners' court, and Aiyuk is hoping they make that final adjustment to get a deal done. Exactly what I just said. That the Niners want to get a deal done. They have the framework in place to get a deal done. And Aiyuk wants to get a deal done so much he's asking, he's begging, he's hoping. They just make the final necessary tweaks where they can put this thing to rest and move on. Robbie439 says, I'd give Aiyuk a Snickers bar because maybe he'll stop being a wiener. I'll change that and say, I'll give Aiyuk a Snickers bar and say, he's not him when he's hungry. But to be honest, again, how do we get here? How do we get here? And what do you do now that you're here? Do you blink? Josina Anderson says that there's lingering curiosity on whether San Francisco is still reviewing their options and leverage. Again, she's told it's a waiting game. San Francisco and Brandon Aiyuk have proverbially also isn't a word. Words are hard to say. Anyways, they've been in a staring contest for a long time. Waiting for the next person to blink. It's like that meme where it's the OBJ impersonator. I think that's on the X Factor, and he's like, just waiting for the judges to blink, like, I'm not moving. I ain't leaving. Wolf of Wall Street, I'm not leaving.
This episode is brought to you by Skinny Pop Popcorn. Perfectly popped, endlessly delicious. Oh, so light and crunchy. Skinny Pop Original Popcorn is the snack you've been searching for. Made with just 3 simple ingredients: popcorn kernels, sunflower oil, and salt. Snacking never felt or tasted so good. Perfectly popped, endlessly delicious. Give yourself permission to snack and pick up Skinny Pop Original Popcorn today.
Make me leave. Make me blink. And I think the Niners don't like that. That rubs them the wrong way. They don't want players thinking they have leverage. That's why the Bosa thing took so long to get done. That's why this process has seemingly been finalized on one day and then reversed the next day and then back on. And it feels like we're back and forth. Kind of like, what is the Niners going to do? To a point of the Niners are kind of asking Brandon Aiyuk, what do you want to do? Do you actually want to be here? Or do you want to play this game? We'll trade you now. And according to Rappaport, they now have the deal in place. The Steelers have done enough where San Francisco would say yes. They're just, again, holding out hope that they can continue to talk to Aiyuk, which could last an extra week in time. But I think they want to get this thing done as soon as they can. But this thing could last 2 more days, 3 more days, where they're like, Aiyuk, here's an offer, and they toss them back. But again, what do you do? What should the Niners do? Do they give in? That goes against everything they've done in every other contract negotiations. Do they give way? Do they almost give another player the blueprint on how to play them, right? Do they give players like Demo Lenore? Do they give a player like Mooney Ward, who albeit are free agents after the year, just think in a couple years' time? Brock Purdy is going to have ultimate leverage over San Francisco. I think Purdy wants to be here, but that doesn't mean he, doesn't have leverage. By playing this game, Aiyuk is giving other players a blueprint on how to beat San Francisco in negotiations. Aiyuk has trade leverage for sure. Now, we're not talking like Kalia Davis or Ambry Thomas. We're talking the top guys on the team. San Francisco doesn't want to lose. But just like that husband that frustrates his wife, and you really didn't do anything wrong, but saying sorry is going to mend that fence. That coming to her and apologizing, although maybe you don't really understand her viewpoint, you don't really see what you did wrong, you don't understand exactly where she's coming from, sometimes you got to say you're sorry. Sometimes to mend that fence, to move forward in your relationship, you don't necessarily have to always understand the other person's point of view. You don't always have to completely buy into what they're telling you. Sometimes things are smaller issues that, and honestly what I think this is, I don't think this is like a massive, they're not angry at each other. They're not fighting. They're not trying, it's not like San Francisco is $10 million off. They're probably about a couple million off, which is a lot of money, but not in the NFL contract-wise. They aren't too far away from a deal of getting this thing done, hammered away. San Francisco, I think, honestly, and Aiyuk, they're both kind of the husbands here. Go to the table and say you're sorry and compromise. Get this thing done. You both want to be here. How can you work on finding out the path to doing so? Aiyuk, to me, and I think it was Art at the top here said, he's just using the Steelers. Yeah, he is. He's like, he'll play for them, sure. But he doesn't want to leave San Francisco. That's the thing. Yes, he will go be there with Mike Tomlin and Russell Wilson and George Pickens and whatnot. And I think that's what has been frustrating San Francisco and even Aiyuk himself of like, it's almost like when I haven't done this, but in the movies and television where, the girl wants to make the other guy jealous, she dates somebody else or she goes out with somebody else. And it's like, okay, well then San Francisco is like, okay, but we're not jealous here. Like, we're really not jealous. So, I mean, man. Why is everyone saying the title should be updated? Is there breaking news I should see? Should we check X? Let's see. Is there breaking news? No. There's not. Okay. I just wanted to make sure. But again, all the reports are saying they're not far apart. The Niners aren't getting jealous. Aiyuk's ploys aren't truly working. Because the Niners aren't blinking. They're frustrated, sure. Very frustrated. But they're not blinking. Aiyuk's begging them to blink. Aiyuk and I think Eddie the Horror Addict here, which I think is that Edge as the profile pick? Nice, Adam Copeland, shout out. Mike Garafolo said earlier today that Aiyuk prefers to stay in San Francisco. Niners offer's gotten better and both sides are close to a deal. The main points are agreed upon. I'm sure it's what you're getting at. But again, what do you do now that you're here? What do you do that you're almost done? Who blinks? Who gives in first? Honestly, if I'm San Francisco, and this is what's frustrated me most about the entire process. The deal could have been done in April. The deal also could have been done last week, 2 weeks ago. I don't think Aiyuk is asking for CeeDee Lamb money. I don't think he's asking for, Justin Jefferson money. I just think he's asking for $28.5 million. And it's going to make me laugh so hard. When we see the final numbers, if a deal actually gets done, and it's what every content creator, YouTuber, journalist had projected the contract to be the whole time. But San Francisco was like, we're not doing that. We have to win. You're getting 26 and that's it. And Aiyuk was like, huh? Well, that doesn't make any sense. Doesn't seem very fair. And you're right, Tony. The Niners love to dominate headlines, which makes it so much more frustrating that Jed York and co. can't give the guaranteed money that Aiyuk wants. Now, that's one side. Just get it done. Get it done, man. This thing should have been done months ago. It should have been done in April, last week. If they're inches away from a deal, whether it's re-signing or trading him, which it feels like it's a teeter-totter battle, and I've always said the past week, maybe week and a half, that the longer this thing plays out, the better for the Niners. Every day that goes by, you've heard that things are looking better for San Francisco. They're back to the table. They're renegotiating. But for the sake of conversation, let's say things fall apart. Let's say the Niners can't come to an agreement with Brandon Aiyuk. Let's say that when it's all said and done, the couple millions of dollars they're apart on, the small, minute details they can't agree upon, and let's say Aiyuk is traded away. How do you replace that? Does it make sense to trade him? No, it doesn't. Does it make sense to let your number one receiver go? In fact, here's some stats here for you. Does it make sense in an offense that has Brock Purdy and Deebo Samuel and Chris McCaffrey and George Kittle and Juwan Jennings, if you want to add him in there, and Brandon Aiyuk, does it make sense that Brandon Aiyuk had 116 targets last year? For the folks saying that he's not worth the same elsewhere, I don't necessarily disagree with you, but he is this team's number one receiver right? 116 targets. Debo had 106. McCaffrey had 103. Kittle had 99, and Juwan Jennings had 45. The reason I read that stat off to you is because if you trade Aiyuk, and it's just a Pittsburgh and Niners trade, Pittsburgh's only offered draft picks. They have not offered a player. You're not getting George Pickens. You're not getting Calvin Austin III. You're not getting Van Jefferson. You're not getting anybody. It's just Aiyuk and a handful of picks. What do you do to replace Aiyuk now? Now there's not a crater in your offense, but he's your number one separator, the guy that can beat man coverage the most consistently on your offense, the guy that is supposed to be coming into his prime in the next year or so, if not now. What is he, 26 years old? This is when you want to re-sign your players, right? But let's say it's not a receiver for receiver trade, and it's just picks involved. Are you going to trust Juwan Jennings, who compared to Aiyuk's, again, 116 targets, had 45? No. No. Sure. Could you trust Ricky Pearsall? Maybe. I like him a lot, but he ain't BA yet. May never be. Do you go and acquire a receiver? That seems like the route the journalists are reporting, that San Francisco, amongst their options of trading Aiyuk to Pittsburgh or re-signing him, the other option is take the picks they get for Aiyuk and then move those for another player. Who could that player be, though? Who could that player be? Because, again, we've dissected this over and over and over again. There's not many people out there. Now, I can guarantee you the minute if a trade goes through, you are going to hear fans, whether it's on the YouTube comments, on Twitter, on Instagram, screaming out of the heavens, saying, go get Davante Adams. Get him. You have the ammunition now. Sure. That's the white whale. That is if you're going to trade Aiyuk, go get Davante Adams. Again, there's been no report. There's been no notice, no indication the Raiders even want to trade Davante Adams. There's been I don't even think what's been reported to be the Niners' asking price for Aiyuk of 2 second-round picks and a couple thirds. I don't even know if that would get Davante. I really don't. So, probably counts him out. Now, that is to say the Raiders could view it as draft picks on a rebuilding team and then get out of the contract. That could be a big thing because his contract jumps up in the next 2 years, albeit the guarantees are very low, where San Francisco could get out of it by next year's time. But I would likely think that Davante is not even being shopped, not even out there for anyone to trade for, nor would he get traded for less than a first-round pick, like Aiyuk was supposed to get traded for early in the process. Then you move to Courtland Sutton, who there was rumors out there that he could have been traded to San Francisco. There was rumors that, maybe the Niners had their eyes towards him, but there were, again, just like Davante Adams, no indication that the Broncos want to trade him. They have denied his request to be traded the past 2 years multiple times. So could a handful of picks maybe go to Denver? Maybe, but again, Denver has not been willing or openly playing ball to trade Courtland Sutton. They have a young quarterback in Bo Nix. Courtland Sutton's only 28 years old, getting paid, I think, $20 million a year. Not getting paid too much. Then there's people like Kendrick Bourne, who the Niners apparently, in the deal they had in place with the Patriots, wanted Kendrick Bourne back. They wanted picks and Kendrick Bourne. That was the deal they had in place. I'm sorry, you're trading Aiyuk away for a bona fide third receiver, which you already kind of have in Juwan Jennings. That doesn't make sense to me. I think it could be rather redundant. It'd be a more expensive third receiver option, which doesn't make sense at all. Then you go down to the Browns, Will the Browns, by not getting Aiyuk, even still want to trade Amari Cooper? I doubt it. Now, maybe Cooper, who already posted on social media about, that's interesting, I wouldn't mind that. Interesting. Could that be a possibility? Well, sure, I'll go to San Francisco. Get me out of here. I don't want to be in Cleveland. Could the idea of playing in San Francisco excite him so much he asks for a trade? And he says, because he has trade leverage, I only want to play in San Francisco. Probably not. Leaving little options. But there has been this kind of dark horse underbelly, if you will, report out there that the Niners want a receiver if they're going to trade Aiyuk, but may shift their focus towards a different position. Now, there are two players out there that aren't receivers, and they play the same position, and it happens to be a position that San Francisco is wildly lacking depth at. And that is the edge rushing position. You can go back to New England and Matthew Judon, who wants a brand new deal, mind you. Would you trade for Matthew Judon if you can't find a receiver to replace Aiyuk? Would you go with Debo and Jennings and Pearsall and Cowing and Chris Conley and maybe a Trent Taylor as your receiver core this year? Ronnie Bell this year, if it meant getting a Matthew Judon and giving him a massive deal? I don't know. But that could be an option. Then there is Hassan Reddick, who I don't know what the Jets were thinking, not getting it. Look at what the Niners have done with Brandon Aiyuk, and other teams have been willing to do with Brandon Aiyuk. That we want to make sure a deal is in place before we trade for you. The Jets didn't do that with Reddick. He wants out. If the Niners, again, as Garrett says here, yes, Mike Garafolo just said a deal is close. Doesn't mean it's done. He also said both parties want to stay together, but there are still some minute details that have to be hammered out. This is all for the sake of conversation. If those minute details don't get hammered out, and San Francisco has to pivot because they can't find a receiver on the market, do they look at an edge rusher? Do they look for Hassan Reddick? A guy that can get you 10.5 sacks this year, be literally the best edge rusher Kyle Shanahan has had next to Nick Bosa the entire year long. Or the nuclear option is don't do anything. Sit on your hands. Don't even move the dial. Don't even pick up the phone call. Tell the Pittsburgh Steelers to pound salt. You can play with Pickens and Calvin Austin and Van Jefferson and whoever else you have out there, Pat Freiermuth. Go play with those guys. We'll deal with Aiyuk in-house. That's always been the nuclear option. All these Steelers fans in the comments here making me laugh. Oh, we're getting Aiyuk. Oh, it's happening. It might not. We've heard the Steelers and the Niners have been talking for weeks. We now know a deal is in place. We now know that if Aiyuk won't sign a deal with the Niners, that the deal is essentially done to ship him to Pittsburgh. But that doesn't mean San Francisco won't get a deal done. Yes, are they inching one way? I think so. But it's only if they can't get a deal done. And I think, again, as this thing lingers and goes on and these guys come back to the table, what would be the best option? Like if I asked you this, people like James Wilson, Chris Bradford in the chat, Pittsburgh Steelers fan 8, Garrett Dale, David Sparrow Jr., all the Steelers fans, Tony Meredith, Bobo, Lori Matthews. Whether you're a Steelers fan or a Niner fan, what will be the best move that has the Niners' best interest in mind? I can tell you what it wouldn't be. Trading Brandon Aiyuk. It wouldn't be that. It'd be retaining him, keeping him. allowing him to be the next star you re-sign for a long time, allowing him and Brock Purdy to flourish as probably the next great Niner quarterback and receiver tandem. Debo's great, obviously, and whatnot. More of a Jimmy G guy, if you will. But the Niners have what they've been looking for since Jeff Garcia and T.O., if you will. Steve and Jerry, or Joe and Jerry, if you will. They've been looking for this for 20 years, and they have it. You don't look to trade Brandon Aiyuk when you find your franchise quarterback. You look to build around your franchise quarterback. Would trading Aiyuk not be the ultimate punt? And in fact, if you want to get real serious here, let's say in the next 2 minutes, the Niners trade Aiyuk to Pittsburgh. It is one of the worst botched jobs ever in Niner contract history. It would be just a fumble. It'd be the Kyle Williams of contract fumbles. Not once, but twice. In the playoffs. It'd be terrible. This is not what well-run organizations do. And I hate to go this hard at them, but if the Niners do not re-sign Brandon Aiyuk and trade him, they have operated as a dysfunctional front office throughout this process. And they're not that. Yes, they've made mistakes trading up for Trey Lance. Sure. They were also smart enough to realize their mistake and move off of him in 2 years without seeing him. I don't know, what did he take? Maybe 100 total snaps in the NFL? They said, no, we see enough, we're good. But yet they're dumb enough to lose one of their star players and not get the maximum value for them. That's why I think, and look, I don't think San Francisco is dysfunctional. I don't think San Francisco is acting like the Cleveland Browns of all of 5 years ago. I don't think they're acting as this terrible team that has no idea what they're doing at the top. In fact, it's quite the opposite. The Niners have had a plan for almost everything, even if their plan is wrong, even if their idea eventually fails like Trey Lance did, and like Javon Kinlaw did. At least they have a plan that you can get behind. Okay, fine. You want to trade 3? Cool. Great. But that's why I don't think a deal of trading Aiyuk to Pittsburgh makes sense. That's why I don't believe that despite having a deal purportedly agreed upon, if Aiyuk won't resign, I still wouldn't pull the trigger. I still wouldn't trade him. Henry, yes, just saw another site saying Niners and Brandon close to a new deal. Like I've already stated a handful of times, Mike Garafolo has said today, as of 5 o'clock, 4:30 this afternoon on the West Coast, that San Francisco and the Niners and Brandon Aiyuk have agreed to the main parts of a deal, but are still going through the process still. Nothing is agreed upon just yet. But they also, again, have the framework of a trade with the Steelers ready to go if Aiyuk won't resign, if they can't come to an agreement. Even then, trading Aiyuk would be a colossal mistake. It would close your window at least for a year. Like if I told you the Niners walked into the Super Bowl, and then that's not even guaranteed. You'd walk into year 1 without Aiyuk, Brock Purdy's final year of his current contract, or before he can get paid, right? With already, 23 players on the shelf. You've lost Kalia Davis. Pearsall is still injured. Cowan didn't play in the first preseason game. Fred Warner just came back to practice. And Trent Williams is nowhere to be found. In fact, this morning on the Scoop podcast, Dan Orsini said there has been no movement on getting Trent Williams back in the building. Now, I would agree with her second statement of a deal's probably going to get done. That's the expectation, but there's been no movement there's been no movement. Robbie asks here in the chat, Sterling, if BA signs, what's your level of concern with him not practicing all offseason? Do you think the Niners limit his reps? That's why I think they're pushing to get this done now. That's where I think the concern comes in, where if they wait until next week, last week of the preseason, there's a difference of, you're in shape, which Aiyuk is, and football shape. That, yes, like James says here, he'll be the healthiest player, but also he's not going to be in football shape. He needs that 2 weeks, 3 weeks to get ready. You don't want to walk into the year with a Nick Bosa situation where, he says his body isn't right until halfway through the season. You want to come out on the run. You have the Jets and the Rams early. You have the Cowboys in the first half of the season. You want to come out thumping your opponents. Not just escaping or losing close games because Aiyuk isn't healthy. And the unfortunate part of this is if it lingers, which it seems like it's not going to, we are days away, if not hours away, it feels like, from getting something done here. The longer this thing plays out, the less time Aiyuk has to get ready. The less time he has to get ready, the more risk of a hamstring, a calf injury. You saw the first, 2 days of training camp? Cowing, Tay Martin, and Isaac Grendo all went down with hamstring strains. Grendo hasn't practiced in 2 or 3 weeks because of that. So, while yes, he'd be the healthiest player, if you will, not taking any reps in the offseason or during training camp, he'd also probably have a higher chance of getting injured because he hasn't taken things slow and eased into the training camp process, which is why San Francisco wants to get this thing done, whether it's re-signing Aiyuk, getting picks, and then trading those picks for somebody else. They want to get whoever they're going to have in the building now. Whether it's Judon, Reddick, whoever else it might be that's out there that hasn't practiced, they got to get those guys in that building now to, 1, get their body right, but 2, learn the system as well. Which again is why re-signing Aiyuk makes a lot of sense, and more sense than moving him. There was a comment here by Robbie again. If they sign BA, we get cap space freed up, right? Maybe we get Trent and BA and Trent back to back. That's the misconception about this whole thing, Robbie. And Steeler fans that are going nuts in the chat, thank you so much. But also, the Niners don't need to trade Aiyuk to free up any money.
This episode is brought to you by Amazon. Amazon has curated selections of college essentials, from dorm room hacks to internet-famous finds. And with Amazon's unbeatable deals and everyday low prices, there's no need for a second student loan. Plus, with Amazon's fast and reliable delivery, it's all there when it needs to be. Make the most of college for less with Amazon. Shop now at amazon.com/off-to-college.
That's the misconception. They can't re-sign everybody. 1, you don't have to, but 2, you can re-sign Brandon Aiyuk this season and cut that cap hit in half. You can carry that cap bend over into next year. Then you can re-sign Brock Purdy to a massive deal. When you give Trent Williams a new contract, you can lower his cap hit as well. You can remove void years. The Niners, yes, will have to give money away, but in return also get to save money as well. They don't have to move Brandon Aiyuk to help them financially at all. Yes, in 2 or 3 years down the road, they pay Aiyuk big money. But then Kittle's a free agent, Debo's a free agent, and many other players' contracts are going to be up. It's not as if there's going to be this massive overlap of like Kittle and Debo and Aiyuk and Purdy and McCaffrey and Trent and Fred and Bosa all on the same, or these massive contracts at the same time. Every year someone else has gone. The Niners do not have to trade Aiyuk to help them financially at all. On the Trent Williams front, Tony Meredith says the NFL doesn't like to give older players guaranteed money. Trent is 36 years old, and one injury, he might never play another snap. You're right. That's true. I just think in the good graces that Trent is in with the Niners and how they treat their players, old or young, they're probably going to give him that money. Now, how much will it be? I have no idea. But he probably wants to get paid as the highest left tackle in football, and he's still playing at a high level. Yes, the ankle, if it gets hit, gets run over, gets stepped on, could be done. And it's over, which would suck. Yet, while you don't want an injury to happen, if it does happen and he does retire, you can get some of that money back. So it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world, albeit you want a healthy Trent all the time. So there's certainly a risk, but in the off chance he gets injured and does retire, you can find some money back. Chris Bradford asks here, would Niner fans take Russ in a trade for Aiyuk? To put it bluntly, hell no. What do we need him for? And I'll be honest with you, Steeler fans, I appreciate your comments. I really, really do. Russell Wilson's not good anymore, and I'd rather have the cheaper options we have behind him. Russ didn't take checkdowns last year in Denver, which is why he got shipped out of town. Like, you're not getting Seattle Russ back. You're getting maybe a better version of Denver Russ, which was pretty bad. Pretty bad. I don't know why people were saying that Aiyuk isn't better than Roman Wilson. Yes. Yes, he is. Wow. I love Steeler fans. They are hilarious. I love them so much. This is awesome. But as things stand now, and I will check Twitter right now to make sure nothing else has transpired. And as you can see from my X account, and I'm going through it as we speak, nothing has happened. Nothing. And we've talked about things from the Niners' perspective so much in this podcast. What about Brandon Aiyuk's perspective? Would it benefit Brandon Aiyuk to go to the Pittsburgh Steelers? No. He would win less. He'd get paid more. He'd win less. They have no quarterback. You know, Justin Fields. You have to see if Fields gets better. Ain't no promise he's going to get better. There's no promise he even plays. So what does it benefit Brandon Aiyuk to want to go to Pittsburgh? Nothing. Outside of money, what does Pittsburgh have that San Francisco doesn't currently have that Brandon Aiyuk wants? Better winning percentage in San Francisco. Like, there's no promise the Steelers even, one, make the playoffs, but two, they're not winning that division. We went to the playoffs last year with Mason Rudolph. You're not better than the Ravens. You're not better than, the Browns. Like, had the Browns had Nick Chubb all year, who knows? If Joe Burrow don't get hurt, probably in last place. You don't make the playoffs. And it's no knock on you. I love Mike Tomlin. You have a heck of a defense out there. You don't have a quarterback. That's the issue. So you're going to leave Brock Purdy and go to a downgraded quarterback easily. You're not going to win as much. You're going to be in a tougher division as an offensive player facing some of the best defenses in football. You're going to play the Ravens twice, the Browns twice, and the Bengals twice? No. And you played in a better offense in San Francisco, and you lost to two of those teams. But you want to go play with Russ? You're not going to win as much. Much tougher defenses there. Like, the Rams' defense doesn't scare Aiyuk. Neither does Seattle's, and neither does the Cardinals. You'd be so much worse off as a Steeler if you're Brandon Aiyuk than you would be with the Niners. In fact, Aiyuk is 26 going on 27? They could miss the playoffs up until his next contract. If it's a 4-year deal, he may not be a wild card team for 4 seasons. Now, that's obviously projection, but the way things stand, guys get older. Pickens wants to get paid eventually, right? Not like your offense stays the same. So it benefits Aiyuk to stay in San Francisco at least for 1 more year. At least. But where things stand right now, it feels like that Aiyuk just wants the money. And if that's the biggest stepping stone to get a deal done, brings us back to my whole point of the last week and a half shows. Just compromise. You can get this thing done right now if you meet Aiyuk's demands. If the Niners said, okay, fine, we'll give you whatever you want per year, 30. We'll give you 28. We'll give you the guarantees you want. The deal's done. The deal's done. And you're right, Papa J. You're right. Money talks, BS walks. Hence why Aiyuk has said on Instagram, just pick an option already. You want to keep me? Keep me. You want to trade me? Trade me. Pick one. I'm tired of the constant reports. Just pick an option and pick one. The Niners now, unlike a week ago, have the placement of a trade together with the Steelers. They can take that option. They can take door number 2. But they want to take door number 1. And I think they get this thing done. I don't think he's going to Pittsburgh. Unless, again, they can't get things done. That's the only way. But I don't think he's going to Pittsburgh. Chris Bradford says here, he wants money. He declined 31 from the Pats and 30 from the Browns and 26 from, well, there you go. But dude says, I want Tomlin. That's the thing, is that the Niners having leverage in contract negotiations can give him 28, can give him 30 if they want to. Now you have fans like Mark Collins, who I'm sure Mark's a great guy, but says, please keep his ass. We don't need the trouble making cancer like him. Facts, Pittsburgh doesn't need him. He's a cancer. I have to ask Steeler fans, did you know anything about Brandon Aiyuk before he actually was involved in trade conversations with the organization you root for? Because if you know anything about Brandon Aiyuk, he is the quietest dude out there. That's why this has shocked everybody. Why this thing has taken so long to get done. Because Aiyuk has shown no indication, no signs of being a diva. I don't think he is a diva, but this is like a whole new side of him, which, again, money talks. You see who people are. But Aiyuk's a great team player. He's a willing blocker. Like, this whole thing is new to everybody. It's probably new to Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch, which is why they're so frustrated. Like, who is this guy? He's been here for 4 years. Since 2020, we've gone to the NFC Championship game twice with him, and he's shown no signs of this. What's going on? What's going on? That's why I think this thing has been so tough to get done. Yes, there's money involved. Yes, there's egos and stuff, and I'm sure the way Aiyuk has acted, blindsiding the Niners, if you will, and frustrating them for sure. But, man, I think this comment here by James, I think it's Durnall. BA can go for a cookie and 1 spare sock for all I care. Done listening to his BS. I think everyone's done. I think everyone's done, including San Francisco, which is why things are ramping up, which is why we're nearing the end of this. San Francisco either wants him or he's gone. They either are saying, sign a new deal or get out. Aiyuk is also saying, sign me or trade me. You are nearing the end of your journey of the Brandon Aiyuk saga. You are unfortunately, and hopefully it's a much better ending than the Rise of Skywalker was, but you're near the end of the Aiyuk saga, this 9-part saga. It's almost over. And hopefully he doesn't walk into the frame and says, I don't know, I'm Brandon Tomlin. And you're like, what the heck's going on, man? This is a terrible ending. And yes, Rick, the answer is it can be any minute, any hour for Brandon to say goodbye. We have no idea what's going to happen. Indications, yes, that San Francisco is gearing up and has already offered a new deal. It's on the table, and they're trying to iron out the details. That is what Mike Garafolo essentially said today. But if they can't, then a trade will occur with the Pittsburgh Steelers. But again, we don't truly know what the outcome will be. And it does feel like that the Niners are, as Tony says here, this deal is close. Give it a week or two. You're right. I feel like a signing or a trade has been close for about a month. Every single day it's done, and it's never done. It's never done. X Concepts 1 says CTESPN, that's a source you should always believe for sure, says Brandon Aiyuk, CTESPN said Aiyuk said he will not sign with the Niners. He wants to be a Steeler. I don't think listening to Antonio Brown's Twitter account or his inside sourcing as a Twitter account would be what I would do. But he's been right sometimes. I'm not saying he doesn't have information, but I would like to rely on actual journalists like Adam Schefter and Rap Sheet and Pelissero and Garafolo and Justina Anderson and others, because they have not said that. But CTESPN has, so you never know. Rick Diaz says, here, tell me, my friend, where do we go from here? The players are getting hurt. We have to do something about this. Where do we go from here? We do exactly what we've been doing. We sit and wait anxiously. The Niners are trying to get a deal done. The Niners want to get a deal done. Aiyuk wants to get a deal done. This is not he's guaranteed to go to Pittsburgh and it's over, right? It's over. He's going to black and yellow, baby. Play the Wiz Khalifa. It's over. No. This is a Niners, yes, are getting impatient. They want this thing done. Aiyuk, similar boat. And it could be any hour. Could be a day or two. Could be a week, considering how crazy this thing has been. But it feels like this thing is done. It feels like this thing is done. Pretty Ricky says he predicted that something will happen with Brandon. Pretty Ricky said that about 2 weeks ago and 3 weeks ago and a month ago. And look, Pretty Ricky also said the Jaguars offered pick 17 and Zay Jones for Aiyuk, and San Francisco said no. So it gives me the idea that San Francisco is going to get this thing done. You don't not trade Aiyuk at the draft. Let this thing linger until almost week 2 of the preseason to not get a deal done. To not get a deal done. Sacred Intuition says, what is the issue exactly with the deal and offer? Initially, the $26 million a year deal was just too low for Aiyuk's liking. The new deal, I would assume it's exactly the issue that has been the whole time, and it's total guaranteed money. That's usually the issue with the contracts. Yes, guys like the per year money, but man, this is all about guarantees. As soon as you get the guarantees right, players will sign. That's the thing, is that you put out a 4 year, whatever the money would be, 4 years and whatever it is again. They're averaging 26 a year, 25 a year. Wow, that's so much money. They're really getting the guaranteed money. And San Francisco is very, very, very fickle and tight with their guaranteed money because that comes directly from the owner's pocketbook. And I'm sure Jed York is looking at guaranteed money like Kittle's and Debo's and eventually Brock Purdy's and Trent Williams and Christian McCaffrey's and George Kittle's new deal and all those things and said, well, I'm not sure I want to give Aiyuk that amount of money, that amount of total guarantees, which I would like to believe is what it kind of halted and put the brakes on this deal getting done for a long time. I think it's getting to a point where ownership is going to have to change their mind or just ultimately say no. That's my opinion of the deal and what's going on, but still. Kenneth Miller says this. I think Aiyuk doesn't want to come to the Burgh because he knows he's not tough enough to play in the AFC North. He'd rather play in that soft division in the NFC West. Well, I would agree that the AFC North is this smash mouth, break your teeth in football. Always has been for a long time, especially on defense. That said, didn't Aiyuk torch Pittsburgh's defense last year in week 1? Didn't he block your entire defense downfield? I don't think you can argue that maybe, Jackson Smith and Jigba and DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett and Marvin Harrison Jr. Sure. I think Aiyuk, of any receiver in the NFC West, I think him and Puka Nacua would fit well in the AFC North. That said, I don't think he's going to Pittsburgh. I don't. Does it? I feel like every 5 minutes, my mind is like, what's happening? And it's like, oh, he might go. But every time you kind of sit back and let your emotions cool on this, well, if everything makes sense for the Niners to re-sign Aiyuk and everything makes sense for Aiyuk to go back to San Francisco, and the only issue is money, then give him more money. From all the reports, it doesn't feel like what he's asking for is unreasonable. There has been nothing that has said concretely he wants $30+ million a year. Nothing has said that. Nothing. And he might get that for sure. But no one has said that. No one. That's the speculation. What if he's asking for 28, 29? Okay, cool. Take it. That'll be like the 7th best receiver contract in football in a year. If you were Brandon Aiyuk, would you just take $26 million when your worth is actually what the market value says at 28? No. Why would you? I don't blame Aiyuk for asking for more money, because that's not how that works. You're not going to blame Brock Purdy when he asks for record-breaking money, will you? No, you're not. As you shouldn't. You didn't blame Christian McCaffrey or George Kittle or Trent Williams for asking for all that money, as you shouldn't. Aiyuk deserves that same benefit of the doubt, which is why I think they're going to come to an agreement that both sides realize they want to be together. And when two parties believe that, well, then I feel like sometimes it takes a third party to show you that, hey, we're not that far apart. Hence why the Steelers are involved here. You don't think Aiyuk didn't take the contract offer the Steelers had in place and said, this is what Pittsburgh's offering me. Give me this and I'll sign. I guarantee you he did that. That's how negotiations work. That was the whole purpose of, fine, we will give you permission to look elsewhere. That's the third party, to show San Francisco and Aiyuk how close they actually are to getting this thing done. How not far apart they are. How a couple of tweaks here or there, a little bit of money here or there, and you're done. I think this thing is going to come to a head, and it's going to be Aiyuk going back to San Francisco. That's all I have for you today. If you kindly will follow us on social media at 49ers_access is the X or Twitter. 49ers.access is the Instagram. And if you want to go to any football game this year, Steeler fans, Niner fans, whatever team you root for, whatever fan you are, use our promo code 49ersaccess, 49 ERSACCESS at SeatGeek.com and save yourself $20 off your first purchase. It is the kind gift from me to you, to hope that you can save some money, go buy a beer hopefully, in my mind, if you're a Steeler fan, you realize week 1 Aiyuk's not there and you can cry in your beer. That is my hope. That is my honest to God hope. That's what happens. But maybe it'll be reversed if things go the wrong way. We also want to thank our sponsor, SportsSpider.com. I don't know about you, but if I'm a Niner fan, I don't want to have to go to ESPN, NFL Network, YouTube, whatever website you use for your sports news. I'm tired of having to have 7 different tabs open searching for a story. SportsSpider takes the latest articles, videos, and podcasts and organizes them by your favorite team. You're a Steeler fan? They got you covered. You're a Niner fan? They got you covered. If you want to stay up to date as possible on whether it's, again, your Steelers or your Niners, hit that link down below in the description and check out SportsSpider.com. Don't forget to leave a like, share this with your friends and your family, and leave a like on the video. And if you're on the audio podcasting platforms, Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, give us 5 stars. It is the freest and easiest way to help the show out. And as always, as we await the Aiyuk saga to end, as we await for an announcement to come out in the next 5 minutes, the next 2 days, the next month and a half, who knows? Don't forget to come back here for the latest Niners news and YouTube videos. And if you can, as always, stay faithful.